My name's Aaron. I'm 23, and the last words my mother said to me before I left home were, "You're nothing but a burden." Funny how something can sound like an echo even weeks later, like a noise your heart keeps replaying just to make sure it still hurts. I didn't yell back, didn't even pack properly. I just stuffed whatever fit into my old duffel, grabbed my keys, and drove off while she kept shouting from the porch. The lights from our house reflected off my rearview mirror, flickering like a warning I chose to ignore. I thought maybe she'd call after I left. She didn't. Not that night. Not the next. Not for 3 weeks. But my brother did, his voice shaking, asking why I hadn't paid the house bill. And that was the first time I laughed in a long time. But I'm getting ahead of myself. You can't really understand how things got to that point unless I take you back a bit. Back before the shouting, before the slammed doors, before my family decided I was disposable. I grew up in a house where silence was dangerous. You knew mom was angry when she stopped talking. Dad used to call it her storm mode. My brother, Caleb, and I learned early on that her quiet was worse than her yelling. Yelling meant there was still a chance to fix things. Silence meant she was deciding who to blame. And somehow, I was always the easiest target. Caleb was the golden child, the one who could burn toast and somehow be praised for trying. He was 3 years older, taller, louder, and born with the kind of confidence that makes people forgive everything else. Mom adored him. Dad tolerated him. And me? I was the responsible one, which in our house meant the one who cleans up after everyone else. If Caleb forgot to pay a bill, I covered it. If mom needed help setting up her new phone, I figured it out. When dad's car battery died, I was the one outside in the cold with jumper cables while Caleb stood in the doorway holding a mug of coffee like he was doing us a favor by supervising. I didn't mind it at first. I thought that's what being a good son was. Helping, stepping up, making life easier for everyone else. But over time, it stopped feeling like help and started feeling like servitude. They didn't thank me anymore. They just expected. It started small. Mom would call me at work to ask if I could pick up groceries after my shift because Caleb had a long day. Then it became, "Can you transfer some money? Your brother's short this month." I used to tell myself it was temporary, that they'd notice eventually. That mom would say she was proud of me the way she said it to Caleb every time he got a new job, even though he quit most of them within months. Instead, the older I got, the more invisible I felt. The breaking point started forming on a quiet Sunday afternoon. I'd come home early from work because mom said we were having a family dinner. Those words still meant something to me then. I wanted to believe we were okay. I walked in to find Caleb sprawled across the couch, playing on his phone, while mom sat at the table surrounded by bills. Her expression was tight, the kind that warned me I was about to become the topic of the conversation. "Your car payment's late again," she said without looking up. I froze. "What?" "No, it's not. I set it to auto pay last month." She slid a paper across the table, a printout from the bank. "Then maybe you should check your account before you argue with me." I looked. My stomach twisted when I saw it. Not because she was right, but because the withdrawal date was 2 days off. It wasn't even late yet. "Mom, this is excuses," she cut in. "You've been so careless lately, Aaron. You used to be reliable." Reliable. That word again. It always came right before she reminded me of everything I'd failed to do for them. "You're not pulling your weight," she said. "Your father and I can't keep carrying you." I blinked at her, stunned. "Carrying me? I've been paying rent, bills, groceries. Not enough," she snapped. "And your attitude lately." My attitude? I couldn't help laughing. "Mom, I work 6 days a week. Caleb doesn't even have a job right now. What attitude are you talking about?" Her jaw tightened. "Don't you dare bring your brother into this. He's been going through a rough time." I wanted to scream. Caleb's rough time had been going on for 2 years, ever since he quit college to find himself. Somehow that meant staying up until 3 a.m. gaming and sleeping until noon. But I didn't say that. I'd learned long ago that defending myself only made things worse. So I shut up and took it, like always. That was how it went for weeks. Little digs. Subtle shifts. The kind of tension that builds so slowly you almost don't notice until it's choking you. I started staying out later, eating alone, sleeping less. The house stopped feeling like home. It felt like a trap. Then came the night everything snapped. Mom was waiting for me when I got home from work. The house was dark except for the kitchen light, and she was standing there with her arms crossed, eyes burning. Caleb sat at the table, scrolling on his phone, pretending not to listen. I could tell right away I was in trouble for something again. "Did you use my credit card?" she asked. Her tone wasn't curious, it was accusatory. "What? No. Why would I? Because there's a $200 charge from your job on my statement." I frowned. "That's impossible. I used my own card for." Then I stopped, remembering. 2 weeks ago, Caleb had borrowed my wallet for a quick drive. I hadn't thought much of it. My cards were all there when he returned it, except maybe one wasn't. Mom's eyes narrowed when I hesitated. "So you did?" "I didn't," I said louder this time. "I think Caleb—" "Enough," she barked. "I am so tired of you blaming your brother for everything. You can't take responsibility for a single mistake." "Mom, I swear, you're nothing but a burden," she screamed, slamming her hand on the table. The sound echoed off the walls. "You think we owe you something because you pay a few bills? You're lucky we even let you stay here." For a second, I just stood there, staring. It was like my mind couldn't process the words. Burden. Lucky. The air felt thick, heavy. Caleb didn't even look up. "Pack your bags," she said finally, her voice trembling. "Get out of my house." And that was it. No reasoning, no apology. Just a final judgment. I didn't argue. Maybe because I was too tired. Maybe because a part of me had already left months ago. I went upstairs, packed quietly, and left. The night air was cold when I stepped outside, and I remember thinking how peaceful it was. How different silence could sound when it wasn't laced with anger. I drove for hours, crying quietly, not because I wanted to stay, but because I couldn't believe how easy it was for them to let me go. For 3 weeks, I tried to rebuild. I crashed on a friend's couch, picked up extra shifts, and found a small apartment across town. I didn't hear from them once. Not a single text. And then, out of nowhere, Caleb called. His voice was frantic. "Aaron, why didn't you pay the house bill?" "Mom's freaking out." "I couldn't help it," I laughed. A bitter, tired laugh. "Didn't you all tell me to leave?" He paused. "This isn't funny, man. The water's about to be shut off." "Then maybe you should talk to Mom," I said. "I'm not part of that household anymore." 5 minutes later, my phone lit up, 47 messages. Missed calls. And one text from Mom that just said, "Please, we need to talk." I stared at the screen, my heart pounding, torn between anger and something else I couldn't quite name. Because for the first time in my life, they needed me. And I wasn't sure yet if I was going to answer. I didn't reply to Mom's message that night. I just stared at the screen until the words blurred. "Please, we need to talk." It was the first time she'd ever said please to me in years, and the irony stung more than I expected. I kept thinking about her voice the night she kicked me out, sharp, cold, final. Now, suddenly, I was supposed to be the one to fix things again. I tossed the phone aside and tried to sleep, but my brain refused to shut up. Every memory, every insult, every time I had been blamed for Caleb's mistakes, it all came back in waves. It's weird how silence can get louder the longer you sit in it. I could almost hear Mom pacing around, yelling at Caleb, maybe even crying. But I reminded myself that none of it was my responsibility anymore. For the first time in my life, I didn't owe them a thing. The next morning, I woke up to another flood of texts. Caleb had sent me a long message explaining how Mom's been stressed and how we all say things we don't mean. He even tried to sound like the peacemaker, the same role he always played after one of Mom's explosions, the golden boy who could do no wrong. But one part caught my eye. "Mom told the neighbors you left because you didn't want to help with bills anymore. They think you just ran off." That was classic Mom. Rewrite the story, play the victim, and make sure everyone knew how ungrateful her son had been. I didn't reply. I didn't even trust myself to. A few days passed, and things got strangely quiet. I thought maybe they'd figured it out. Maybe Caleb had stepped up. But then one evening, as I was coming home from work, I saw my phone light up again, not with a call, but with a notification from the utility company. My name was still listed on the house account. Apparently, Mom had never transferred it. The bill was 2 months overdue. 2 months, meaning they hadn't paid since before she kicked me out. And worse, the late fees were under my name. That's when the anger really started to take shape. Not just frustration or disappointment, but that deep, hollow kind of anger that makes you shake. I called the company, explained the situation, and had the account switched over to Caleb's name immediately. The rep on the phone even asked if I wanted to pay the overdue balance to avoid service interruption. I almost laughed. "No," I said flatly. "They'll figure it out." That night, My phone started buzzing again. Mom. Aaron, what did you do? The power's out. Caleb, they cut it off. Are you serious? You could have warned us. Mom again. You've become so heartless. After everything I've done for you. Everything she'd done for me. Those words rolled around in my head like a bad joke. I didn't reply. I didn't owe them an explanation. Not anymore. But the real betrayal came a week later. I was finally starting to feel some peace. I'd settled into my small apartment, bought a few thrift store chairs, even cooked dinner without hearing someone yell my name from the other room. I was rebuilding, brick by brick. Then, one afternoon, my landlord knocked on my door holding an envelope. It's for you, he said, looking uncertain. But it was dropped off by someone strange. A woman. I opened it after he left. Inside was a folded note from Mom. No greeting. No apology. Just one sentence. You'll regret doing this to your family. And attached beneath it was a printout, my bank transaction history. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. Then my stomach dropped. There were 3 unauthorized withdrawals, each a few $100s, all recent. I called the bank immediately. They confirmed the transactions came from my online account, but when I pressed for details, they said the IP matched my old house's Wi-Fi. Mom. I changed my passwords, froze my cards, and sat there shaking. Not just because of the money, but because it confirmed something I had spent years trying not to believe, that my family didn't just take advantage of me. They used me. I drove to the house that same night. It felt weird pulling into the driveway again. The porch light was off, and the whole place looked smaller than I remembered. I knocked once, then again harder. Caleb opened the door, wearing that same smug expression he always wore when he thought he had the upper hand. What are you doing here? He asked. Where's Mom? She doesn't want to talk to you. Yeah, well, she should have thought of that before stealing from my account. He blinked. What are you talking about? Don't play dumb, Caleb. I traced it. The money came from your Wi-Fi. That's when his smirk faltered. Just for a second, but it was enough. Mom said you owed her, he mumbled. Owed her? I stepped closer. For what? For raising me? For kicking me out? For ruining my credit? He didn't answer. He just looked away, muttering something about how family helps family. That phrase made my blood boil. I laughed bitterly. Family helps family, I repeated. Funny, because when I needed help, you two threw me out like trash. The sound of footsteps made me turn. Mom stood at the end of the hallway, arms crossed, expression cold as ever. You have no right to come here, she said. No right. You stole my money. Her tone didn't waver. That money belonged to this house. You abandoned us. You don't get to walk away and leave us to suffer. Abandoned, I said, my voice cracking. You told me to leave. Because you needed to learn respect, she snapped. You've always thought you were better than everyone else. Acting like a martyr because you pay a few bills. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My chest tightened, a mix of anger and heartbreak that made it hard to breathe. You stole from me, I repeated quietly. She didn't even deny it. You owe this family for everything we've done for you. Don't act like some victim. And that's when something inside me broke. All the years of biting my tongue, working late, taking blame, staying quiet just to keep the peace, it all snapped. I wasn't their scapegoat anymore. You know what? I said, stepping back. You're right. I'm done acting like a victim. I turned and walked out. Mom shouted something behind me. Something about how ungrateful I was, but I didn't turn around. I drove back to my apartment with my hands shaking, gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles hurt. The next morning, I filed a fraud report. The bank said they'd investigate, and I provided every detail I could. I didn't want to get them in trouble, not really. I just wanted them to stop. But part of me knew this was going to escalate. And it did. 2 days later, I got a text from Caleb. Mom's saying you reported her to the cops. Is that true? I ignored it. Then another came in. You're sick, man. After everything we did for you. Then another. You think you're better than us now? You'll see what happens when you mess with family. That one made me pause. You'll see what happens. It didn't sound like Caleb, not exactly. It sounded like Mom, using his phone. That same manipulative phrasing, that same emotional poison. That night, I double-checked my locks. The days that followed were tense. I started getting blocked calls. Sometimes I'd pick up and hear breathing. Once, I heard Mom's voice before the line went dead. I changed my number, but it didn't stop the letters. Handwritten ones dropped at my door. Some begging, some blaming. One saying, you can't erase family. It was like she couldn't accept that I was gone. like she'd rather destroy me than admit she lost control. Then came the final straw, the real betrayal. One morning, I got a call from my HR department at work. They said someone had contacted them pretending to be me, claiming I needed my paycheck redirected to a new account. Thankfully, HR flagged it because the voice didn't sound right. I hung up and just sat there, staring at my hands. My own mother had tried to steal my paycheck. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just dysfunction anymore. It was war, and I wasn't going to be their punching bag ever again. But before I could even decide what to do next, something happened that changed everything. Something that turned all my anger into cold, focused resolve. Because 2 days later, I got another call. This time, it wasn't from work. It was from Caleb. His voice was trembling, panicked, like he was trying to hold himself together. "Aaron," he said, "Mom's in trouble." I froze. What kind of trouble? There was silence on the line, just the sound of him breathing, fast and uneven. Then he said it. "The house, it's gone." And that's where everything started to unravel. For a long moment, I thought Caleb was lying, maybe trying to guilt me into helping again. "What do you mean it's gone?" I asked carefully. My voice was flat, but my pulse was racing. "It burned down," he said, almost in a whisper. "Last night, the fire department said it started in the kitchen." I didn't say anything. The words didn't feel real. That house had been my entire life. The creaky floors, the chipped paint on the banister, the window I used to climb out of when I couldn't sleep. 1,000 memories lived there, even if most of them hurt. "Mom's okay," he added quickly. "She's staying with Aunt Linda for now. But she keeps saying it's your fault." Of course she did. I almost laughed, but it came out more like a sigh. "How is this my fault, Caleb? She says if you hadn't canceled the utilities, she would have seen the wiring problem sooner." I closed my eyes, leaning against the wall. There it was, the pattern. Something bad happens, and I become the villain. I didn't even have the energy to argue. "I'm sorry about the house," I said quietly. "But that has nothing to do with me." He didn't respond right away. I could hear voices in the background, muffled, maybe Mom's. Then, "She wants to talk to you." "I don't think that's a good idea. She's not well, Aaron. She's been crying for hours." I almost said good. Instead, I just hung up. That night, I sat on my couch staring at the ceiling. My apartment was small, a single bedroom, peeling paint, the faint smell of someone else's cooking seeping through the vents, but it was mine. No shouting, no blame, no one taking my things without asking. For the first time, I realized I wasn't just alone, I was free. Still, something in me couldn't shake the guilt. I hadn't caused the fire, but I knew Mom would twist it that way. Maybe to her, losing the house was losing control of everything she thought she owned, including me. Days turned into weeks. I didn't hear from them again. The quiet should have felt peaceful, but instead it felt like standing in the middle of a frozen lake, still, but fragile. Then one morning, as I was leaving for work, I noticed a figure standing outside my apartment building. Mom. Her hair was unkempt, her face drawn, eyes red from crying. But even through all that, she still had that same look of authority, like the world owed her something. "Aaron," she said softly, "we need to talk." I hesitated. Every instinct told me to walk away, but something, maybe curiosity, maybe leftover affection, made me stay. She stepped closer. "You haven't answered my calls." I didn't know where else to go. I stayed by the door, keeping distance. "What do you want, Mom?" "I lost everything," she said. Her voice cracked, but I couldn't tell if it was real or performance. "The house, the furniture, even the family photos. Gone." "I'm sorry," I said. And I meant it. Not for her, but for what the house represented. "But I can't help you. I'm not asking for money." That caught me off guard. She'd never said that before. "I just want my son back," she said. "I made mistakes, I know that. But we're family, Aaron. Families forgive." The word forgive hung in the air like smoke. I thought about everything. The shouting, the manipulation, the way she turned Caleb against me. I thought about how she had stolen from me, lied about me, and then thrown me out like garbage. "Families don't steal from each other," I said quietly. Her eyes hardened. "You still think I took your money?" "I know you did. After everything I've lost, you're really going to hold on to that?" There it was, the shift, the guilt trip, the subtle twist that made me the cruel one. I'd seen it too many times before. "I have to go to work," I said, stepping past her. She grabbed my arm. "Aaron, please. You're all I have left." I pulled free gently. "You had me before. You just didn't want me then." I walked away before she could respond. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. From relief. For once, I didn't let her drag me back in. After that day, I started focusing on building something that was mine. I picked up more shifts, saved aggressively, and took night classes in IT. I'd always been good with computers, and I figured if I was going to start over, I might as well bet on myself. The first few months were brutal. I lived off instant noodles, barely slept, and worked until my eyes blurred. But every time I felt like quitting, I remembered Mom's words. You're nothing but a burden. That became my fuel. A year passed. Then two. Slowly, the pieces of my life began to fit together. I landed a junior tech position at a local firm, then a promotion 6 months later. I got a better apartment, one with real windows and a working heater. I started buying groceries that didn't come from the clearance bin. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Caleb texted me once during that time. Just once. Mom's health isn't great. You should call her. I stared at the message for a long time. I didn't reply. Not because I hated her. By then, the hate had faded, but because I finally understood that forgiveness didn't mean letting someone hurt you again. Months went by. I kept my head down, kept working. I made new friends, started running in the mornings, even joined a local chess club. For the first time, I was living for myself, not for their approval. Then one night, something strange happened. I was coming home from work when I got an email from an unknown sender. No subject line, no signature. Just one line. You think you're better than us now. My chest tightened. I deleted it immediately, but the unease lingered. Over the next few days, more emails came in, little jabs, small accusations, references to things only my family would know. At first, I thought it was Mom, but the phrasing felt different, sloppier, more erratic. Caleb. He'd always been the quiet storm, the one who hid his resentment under charm. Maybe seeing me succeed while they fell apart was too much for him. The final email confirmed it. You stole our life. You owe us. Something inside me snapped, not with anger, but with finality. I wasn't going to run or hide anymore. I wasn't that scared, broken kid they used to control. I was done being their scapegoat. That's when I made a decision. If they wanted a reason to blame me for their downfall, I'd give them one, but not in the way they expected. I started documenting everything. Every text, every bank statement, every email. I met with a lawyer, explained the situation, and for once, someone looked me in the eye and said, "You don't deserve this." It was strange hearing that out loud, almost foreign. Around that same time, my company offered me a relocation opportunity, a chance to move to another city, double the pay, fresh start. The old me would have hesitated, thinking about Mom, wondering if she'd call, if she'd change. But the new me didn't hesitate for a second. I packed my things, left my tiny apartment, and drove 5 hours east to a place where no one knew my name. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was running away. I was moving forward. The new city was alive in a way my old one never was. Streets full of energy, people who didn't know my story, who didn't expect anything from me. I rented a small studio apartment downtown and dove headfirst into work. Every morning, I'd make coffee, open my laptop, and remind myself, this is yours. No one could take it away. But just as life began to feel stable, the past found a way to creep back in, quietly, like it always did. It started with a call from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Aaron. The voice was weak, rasping. I knew it immediately. Mom. There was a pause. Then, I need to see you. My heart sank. I don't think that's a good idea, I said, my voice calm but firm. Aaron, please, she whispered. It's important. Why me? What about Caleb? Another pause. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. Caleb's gone. I froze. Gone where? Her voice cracked. He's dead. I didn't speak. I couldn't. The world felt like it tilted slightly, like gravity had just failed me. He overdosed, she said. Last week. And just like that, everything, the anger, the resentment, the distance, collapsed into something else entirely. Because no matter what he'd done, Caleb was still my brother. The silence that followed was unbearable. I sat there, phone pressed to my ear, staring at the city lights outside my window. I didn't know who else to call, Mom said softly. I can't do this alone. For a long time, I didn't answer. My mind was torn in two, one part screaming that I owed her nothing, the other whispering that maybe, just maybe, walking away forever wasn't as simple as it sounded. I thought I had left that part of my life behind. But grief has a way of reopening doors you thought were sealed shut. And before I knew it, I was packing a bag again. Not for them this time, but for closure. Because no matter how far you run, you can't truly move forward until you face what broke you. When I drove back into town, it didn't feel like home, more like visiting the ruins of something that used to exist. The smell of smoke still lingered faintly along the old road that led to where our house had stood. All that was left was a blackened foundation surrounded by yellow caution tape and overgrown weeds. I parked a few feet away and just sat there, staring at it through the windshield. That house had seen everything. The shouting, the crying, the cold dinners, the small moments when I thought maybe we were getting better. Now it was just ash, a perfect symbol of what was left of our family. When I finally went to see Mom, she looked smaller. Not physically, but hollow. The fire had stripped away her armor. No makeup, no smug tone, no sharp words ready to strike. Just a tired woman sitting in a borrowed chair in Aunt Linda's living room, wrapped in a blanket like she was freezing from the inside out. "Erin," she said softly. "Thank you for coming." I nodded but didn't hug her. I wasn't ready for that. She looked at me for a long moment, searching my face like she was trying to read something hidden. "You heard about your brother." I nodded again. My voice wouldn't work. She sighed and looked down at her hands. "He got mixed up with some people. Bad people. I tried to stop him." Part of me wanted to believe her. The other part remembered how she'd enabled him every step of the way, covering his mistakes, defending him, blaming me. "I didn't say that, though. Not yet. He kept asking about you," she said. "He thought you'd forgive him." Forgive him for what? She didn't say, and I didn't ask. There was too much history to unpack in one conversation. That night, after leaving her house, I sat in my car for an hour replaying everything in my head. Every slight, every lie, every manipulation. Caleb might have been gone, but the damage he and Mom caused was still alive. I could feel it every time she looked at me with that mix of guilt and entitlement. And that's when something shifted inside me. For the first time, I realized I didn't want her apology. I wanted accountability. Real, tangible, undeniable accountability. It wasn't about revenge in the way people usually mean it. I didn't want to hurt her. I wanted her to face reality, to finally see what she had done and what she'd lost because of it. So I started planning. Quietly, carefully. The first thing I did was contact my lawyer again. I told him about the fire, about the bank fraud, about Caleb's death, and about the financial mess that was likely still connected to my name. He listened, then said something that set the tone for everything that came next. "If she's tied to anything illegal, even indirectly, you'll need proof. Real proof. Paper trails, bank records, communication logs." Lucky for me, I'd already been keeping records. I had copies of her withdrawals, screenshots of text messages, even the emails Caleb sent. All I had to do was organize them. For weeks, I worked late into the night after my day job, sorting files, printing statements, highlighting timelines. I wasn't doing it out of spite. I was doing it like someone solving a puzzle. Every piece of evidence was a fragment of the truth that no one had ever believed before. In the process, I found something unexpected. While combing through old joint accounts, ones I thought were long closed, I discovered transfers that didn't match anything I'd done. Thousands of dollars over several months, all funneled into an account under Caleb's name. Only, the account wasn't really his. The signature was Mom's. I sat there staring at the document, heart pounding. It was all there, her handwriting, her initials, even the date that matched the day she'd accused me of using her credit card. That was the moment everything clicked. The fraud investigation I'd started months earlier, it hadn't gone anywhere because I'd never pursued it beyond the initial report. But now, I had evidence. Real, documented proof that she'd been moving money under false pretenses, possibly even identity fraud if she'd used Caleb's name. And with Caleb gone, all of it fell squarely on her. I could have gone straight to the police. I thought about it more than once. But then I realized that would just make me another person she could paint as cruel or heartless. She'd twist it, cry about how her son turned on her when she was grieving. No, I needed something smarter. Something that would make her see what she'd done without giving her a way to spin it. That's when I had an idea. See, before I left the company I used to work for, I'd helped develop an internal data recovery system, software designed to piece together deleted communications, even partial ones. It wasn't illegal to use. It was just a tool most people didn't know existed outside of IT departments. So I installed it on an old laptop and got to work. I recovered everything I could from my old email accounts, my cloud backups, even messages from years ago that I thought were gone forever. What I found made my skin crawl. There were conversations between Mom and Caleb about managing the money, about keeping Aaron in check. Phrases like, he doesn't need to know what we're using it for, and he owes this family more than he realizes. Each word felt like a nail sealing the coffin of whatever sympathy I had left. But then came the real shock. Among the messages was one to a loan officer, signed by Mom, requesting an extension on a mortgage payment for a property I didn't even know existed. The listed address wasn't our family home. It was a rental house across town. And the account owner on the paperwork? Me. I checked the date. It was from 2 years ago, right before she kicked me out. That's when I realized she had opened the property in my name, using my credit, without telling me. I must have signed something back then, thinking it was a utility form or a renewal notice. The signature was mine, but the rest, she'd filled in herself. She hadn't just used me. She'd built her entire safety net on me. It took me a while to calm down after that. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat in the dark, reading the same lines over and over, thinking about all the years I believed I was helping my family when really, I was financing their lies. By morning, I knew what I had to do. I wasn't going to destroy her life. I didn't need to. She'd already done that herself. I was going to expose her, piece by piece, until everyone she'd manipulated finally saw the truth. I started by reaching out to people she still owed money to, old family friends, our landlord from before the fire, even a few of Caleb's acquaintances who'd been trying to collect debts. I didn't tell them everything, just enough to make them ask questions. And questions, I knew, were Mom's worst enemy. Then I contacted the loan company linked to the fake property. I told them I was the named borrower and that I suspected identity misuse. They agreed to investigate, freezing all activity tied to the account while they verified signatures and documentation. Within days, word started spreading. Aunt Linda called me, confused. She's been saying you framed her, she said. But people are starting to ask questions. Big ones. Good, I said quietly. They should. I could tell she wanted to say more, but she didn't. Maybe she knew there was no fixing this. By now, I had a small circle of people who knew parts of the story. A lawyer, a few friends, one journalist I trusted from a local blog who specialized in small-town scandals. I didn't plan to go public just yet, but I wanted options. Meanwhile, I kept my distance from Mom. She tried calling a few times, but I let them go to voicemail. I wanted her to feel the silence she'd once weaponized against me. Only this time, it was her turn to sit in it. Still, part of me knew she wouldn't go down quietly. She'd fight, like she always did, clawing and twisting until she found a way to make herself the victim again. So I waited. I prepared. Because if she wanted a stage, I was going to give her one. Only this time, the spotlight would burn her instead of me. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. Aunt Linda called one evening, her voice hushed but urgent. Your mom's organizing a family dinner, she said. Says she wants to make amends. Everyone's coming. The cousins, your uncle, everyone. My first instinct was to laugh. Of course she was. When the walls start closing in, she throws a performance. I almost said no, but then I realized this was it. The perfect stage. The perfect setup. I told Aunt Linda I'd be there. Then I closed my laptop, looked at the stack of files on my desk, and whispered to myself, time to end the story the way it should have started. I showed up to the family dinner 15 minutes early. The air was heavy before I even walked in. That kind of tension you can feel in your chest, like the whole house is holding its breath. Aunt Linda's dining room had been dressed up with candles, fresh flowers, and a long table that looked way too formal for a casual reunion. It wasn't a dinner. It was theater, and I knew exactly who was directing it. Mom stood near the kitchen doorway, smiling too wide, her makeup thick enough to hide the stress lines. When she saw me, her expression flickered, not warmth, not relief, but calculation. The same look she always gave right before she tried to control the narrative. Aaron, she said, stepping forward with open arms. You came. I said I would. I replied, my voice steady. She hugged me anyway, stiff and cold, and then pulled back to gesture around the room. Everyone's been dying to see you. We've all missed you so much. I glanced around at the gathered faces. Uncles, cousins, family friends. All of them wearing that awkward, polite smile people put on when they know something's off but can't quite name it. Aunt Linda avoided my eyes. "Sit," Mom said, guiding me to a chair near the end of the table. "We'll eat soon. I just want to say a few words first." Of course she did. She couldn't help herself. She clinked her glass, waited for everyone to quiet down, and began. "I know the last few years have been hard. We've faced loss, misunderstandings, and heartbreak. But tonight is about forgiveness, about family, about moving forward." A few people nodded. A cousin patted her hand like she was the hero of some tragedy. I let her talk. I wanted her comfortable, confident, because what she didn't know was that everything I'd been preparing, every document, every email, every bank record, was sitting neatly in a folder inside my briefcase on the floor beside me. When she finished her speech, she gave me that practiced motherly smile, the one she used to disarm people before taking control. "I just want to say how proud I am of my son," she said sweetly. "Even after everything, he's still here. He's grown so much. I only wish his brother could see the man he's become." The room murmured in sympathy. She dabbed at fake tears, and that's when I decided it was time. I reached down, opened my briefcase, and placed a single envelope on the table. "What's that?" Mom asked, her tone still sugar-coated. "Something I think everyone should see," I said calmly. She tried to laugh. "Aaron, this isn't the time." I cut her off. "No, I think it's exactly the time." The room fell quiet. Even the cousins who had been whispering looked up. I opened the envelope and pulled out a few sheets, copies of the bank records I'd uncovered. "This," I said, holding them up, "is proof that Mom has been moving money under my name for years. Loans, property payments, withdrawals, all using my credit and my signature." Her smile vanished. "That's ridiculous." I slid the papers across the table. "The mortgage documents are dated 2 years ago, right before you kicked me out. You remember, don't you? You told everyone I was irresponsible, that I couldn't handle bills. Meanwhile, you were using my identity to cover your debts." People began murmuring again, shifting uncomfortably. Aunt Linda leaned forward, scanning the papers. "Is this true?" she asked quietly. Mom's voice cracked as she tried to keep control. "He's lying. He's trying to make me look bad. You know how dramatic he gets." I reached for the next set of pages. "And these," I said, laying them beside the others, "are your emails. Messages between you and Caleb. You called it managing the money. You told him I'd never find out as long as you kept me busy paying the bills. You said, he owes this family more than he realizes." A gasp went around the table. Mom's face drained of color. "You," she started, but I kept going. "I didn't come here to humiliate you," I said. "I came here because for the first time in my life, I'm not afraid of you anymore. You spent years making me believe I was the problem, that I was ungrateful, that I was nothing but a burden. But all along, you were the one taking from me." Aunt Linda stood up, furious now. "Is this true, Margaret?" Mom's lips trembled. "He's twisting things. Caleb and I, we needed help. We thought he'd understand. It wasn't theft, it was family business." "Family business?" I said quietly. "You stole my money. You signed my name. You wrecked my credit. And when I confronted you, you called me heartless." She started crying then, loud, theatrical sobs that might have fooled strangers, but not me. "I did what I had to do. I kept this family together. You'd never survived without me." The irony almost made me laugh. "No, Mom, you'd never have survived without me. You just didn't realize it until I left." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Aunt Linda said softly, "You should leave, Margaret." Mom looked around the table, desperate. "You're all going to believe him over me?" "Yes," Aunt Linda said simply. And that was it. The room shifted. The sympathy that had always belonged to her drained away. People started whispering, gathering their things, pretending to check their phones. Within minutes, the grand family dinner dissolved into an awkward exodus. Mom stood frozen, her face pale and wet with tears as the last of them filed out. Only Aunt Linda and I stayed behind. When the door finally closed, I looked at her, not with anger, but with something closer to pity. "I never wanted revenge," I said quietly. "I just wanted the truth to stop being one-sided." She said nothing, just stared at the floor, shaking. Aunt Linda stepped forward. "You need to leave now, Margaret. You can't stay here." Mom finally looked at me, eyes full of something I'd never seen in her before. Not hate, not fury, fear. "Where will I go?" she whispered. I thought about the nights I spent sleeping in my car, about the silence of my first empty apartment, about the way she never called until she needed something. I figured it out, I said. You will too. Then I turned and walked out. I didn't look back. Outside, the night air felt sharp and clean. The stars were out, the same ones I used to stare at through my bedroom window, wondering if life would ever feel like mine. Now it did. Over the next few weeks, word spread through town. The loan company completed their investigation and confirmed the fraudulent documents. They froze all remaining assets tied to Mom's accounts. Some of her old friends cut contact. Aunt Linda later told me she'd moved into a small rental house on the edge of town. No savings. No favors left to call in. She tried reaching out once, a letter this time. No apology, just pages of justification, half-true stories, and a single closing line. You'll regret turning your back on family. I folded it neatly, put it in a drawer, and never answered. Because here's the thing about people like her. They only understand loss when it's personal. And for the first time in her life, she couldn't twist her way out of it. Meanwhile, my own life started to bloom. My promotion at work became permanent. The IT project I'd started gained traction, and my name was suddenly being mentioned in rooms I never thought I'd be invited to. I even bought a small condo. Nothing fancy, but it was mine from the ground up. Sometimes I'd catch myself thinking about Caleb. The what-ifs. The moments that could have gone differently. He wasn't innocent, but he was also a product of her control. Maybe we both were. The only difference was that I'd found a way out before it was too late. And in a strange way, that realization made me stronger. Not colder, not bitter, just awake. A few months later, I drove past the lot where our house used to be. The land had been cleared completely. No foundation, no trace of the life that once existed there. Just an open field, quiet and empty. For the first time, it didn't feel like loss. It felt like freedom. I parked for a moment, rolled down the window, and let the wind carry through the car. I thought about everything I'd endured, everything I'd built from nothing, and everything she'd lost because she couldn't stop trying to control what was never hers. And for the first time in my life, I said it out loud. I'm not your burden anymore. Then I started the engine, smiled faintly, and drove away. This time with no tears, no guilt, and no backward glance. Because sometimes revenge isn't fire or fury. Sometimes it's peace. And mine was finally, perfectly quiet.